We'll see who arrives here. Hello, welcome. Folks are rolling in. Folks are rolling in on Saturday afternoon during a heat wave. During a heat wave. If I can just, hello everyone. Hello, welcome in. Welcome in. Uh, welcome. I don't know how many folks are actually going to join us today. If we only have a few, might just turn it into um, meeting instead of a webinar. All right, welcome. Just getting everything sorted out here. Give me a second. All right, I think what we're going to do, since we only have a few people here, is I am going to go ahead and we'll talk about this resource map, and then I might just make everyone panelists because it's Saturday afternoon and I can do whatever I want. So I'm just going to make everyone a panelist. And then we can talk about why we're here and all right. Welcome everyone. You don't have to participate if you don't want to. I just feel lonely because I'm the only one here. And then this will be an easier way for people to ask questions if they want to ask questions. Um, that's fine. You don't have to be a panelist. That's fine. Okay. That's okay. Okay, cool. Welcome everyone. So thank you for joining us here on Saturday afternoon um, to talk a little bit about this resource map that the EDD has. I've promoted everyone who wants to be a panelist just because I'm doing this all by myself, which is lonely. But let me go ahead and tell you what the EDD resource map is and why it is potentially an exciting thing for artists and creatives in New Mexico. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the resource map, what it is, how to be part of it if you want to, and how it might be able to help artists and creatives with businesses in New Mexico. All right. So I'm also just going to go ahead and put in the chat um, why there are so many panelists. So give me a sec here. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. So the EDD resource map. First, my name is Mike. I work for an organization called Creative Startups, and we are contractors with the EDD, not part of the EDD, but we are contractors with the EDD working on a strategic plan for the new Creative Industries Division, which is a new part of the Economic Development Department for the state of New Mexico, designed to support folks working, making a living in the creative economy. So part of that support, and actually part of the EDD's sort of overall strategies, has been to launch this new resource map, which I'll put the link in the chat for folks to sort of explore on their own, if they want. And basically the goal of the resource map is twofold. One, it is to create a directory of businesses in New Mexico, and we'll talk about why that's useful or interesting. And two, it's to create a directory of support for small businesses, and particularly in our case for creative businesses in New Mexico. So it's here. It is basically a searchable map that you can search by the EDD sort of 6 regions if you want. Like if we click here, we get to a filter that is specifically Southeastern region resources. And let's talk a little bit about just sort of what that is right quick. And then we'll talk about why it is useful or interesting. In this work, traveling around the state, over and over again, talking to people, we heard this idea that there should be this directory of artists and creatives all across New Mexico to help support and get folks' work out there to potential customers, collaborators. And that makes a lot of sense. And this is sort of one aspect of something that could be like that. And we can also talk a little bit about whether that's a useful thing for a state-run economic development department to be doing, or whether more grassroots efforts to collaborate with each other might be more useful. But the map itself is pretty basic. It is a map of, we'll try to get it loaded here. There we go. Cool. And it's a directory of, again, businesses support, and we can search with a few different filters. We're going to turn on the creative industries filter here and search by location, language, area of support, or type of business name. If you are a business and you're looking for certain kinds of support, there's this stage of business filter, which is kind of interesting if you're looking for funders, sort of business support programs. There's a communities of interest filter to sort of define by communities of interest what specific support tailored, right? And then obviously location, radius. So if, for example, we put just sort of an obvious one, we see what we already have here in the Albuquerque area. We'll keep it really tight to Albuquerque. And we'll just search here. And as we can see right now, oops, let me make sure I clicked creative industries. Yeah, I did. Okay, great. As you can see right now, what's there in initial stage of being launched here is kind of all over the place in terms of creative industries. And we've got some resources to help entrepreneurship, some really cool nonprofits in culinary arts here. But obviously, I think we can see immediately that we need a lot more in order for this to actually be viable and be useful as a directory of creative businesses. So let me show you. Yeah, we have, it's being slow. Can you share the link in the chat? Yes, we can share the link in the chat again. There's the link one more time. All right. So as I was saying, yeah, we need a lot more here for this to be actually really useful for creatives and artists. And so for that, we have been, as part of this work, sort of researching and scouring and talking to people. But I also, for the folks on this call, just want to point out and share this form to put yourself on the map and just sort of go through this form right quick if you haven't already seen it. Let me go ahead and share the link to that form in the chat. All right, so there's that. And there's the form. Okay. And Yes, I'll share my contact info and everything as well at the end. But let me show you this form and talk a little bit about why this might be useful for artists and creatives across the state. So we want to make it easy for potential customers, collaborators, funders, to find creative businesses. And it's okay if you are not like a physical business, and you still want to be sort of registered as part of this directory of creative ventures across the state. And so that we sort of designed our form to be able to include as many different kinds of creative businesses as possible. So venues, educational organizations, creative businesses, as a sort of catch-all category, co-working spaces, maker spaces, studios, galleries, museums, libraries, and spaces of general creative percolation. So again, just trying to be as inclusive as possible, because the nature of creative economy is that you might have something that's very hard to describe. And we want to make sure that um, is that there's a way for you to be part of this as well. So yeah, it's just a normal form. You fill out your email, the name, address, best way to contact, web presences. You can describe how the place is open to the public, if it is, categorize the sector of the space. And these sectors are in line with the creative industries division, the way that those are defined in the bill, HB8, that established the creative industries division. So I encourage folks, again, to look that up. And any conditions or notes about the place, if it's only open certain times a day, etc. This is actually an old version of the form. Let me pull it up again. Yes, and then any community of interest tags you would like to add. And there's also a space on the map itself for logos, and once you submit, we'll sort of find your logo, or you can put a link to it anywhere in this form so we can make sure that your logo is included. Let me give you just sort of a quick example of um, how this resource might be useful, right? If we get enough participation. So one discussion that I had in talking to Amber Dodson, who's the head of New Mexico Film, she was describing when film productions come to the state, there are lots of folks who work directly on that production, right? And that's the film industry, which is separate by the definition of the bill from the creative industries division, right? Like just folks who work on set, work in the unions, work on the film itself. But there are also lots of things that a film needs in terms of creative goods and materials for set decoration, for costumes, all of these things. And that's a place where having a map, let's say that you're shooting something down in Otero County, or, out in McKinley County, and you want to connect with local businesses that produce textiles, that produce ceramics, to use in the film, this would be a good sort of starting point, for the film office to connect big productions with those small businesses, right? So then you make money as a small business, which is what we all want. So that's one example why this could be useful. And again, there's not a lot there right now. We have been doing a lot of research and collecting about 200, I think, sort of small businesses that are publicly listed in different places across the state to put into this map at the end of our project, which ends in June. But we also, again, really want to encourage you to go and submit your own business, be part of this. So I'm going to once again put this link so you can go fill out this form if you want. in the chat, and then we can talk about all these questions. Here we go. All right. So is the resource map a list of resources for small businesses or a list of small businesses or both? Mike Root asks. It is both. It is a list of small businesses and a list of resources for small businesses. So once again, it is both. It is a list of small businesses and resources for small businesses. And particularly with the creative industries division, we really want to make sure, because this is something people have asked for, that we get as much participation as possible and that we get as many sort of small businesses in this directory to show, especially all over the state. So tell your friends out in these counties all over the state, right? To, if they want to be sort of registered as a creative business in New Mexico, to put themselves on this map. And we have some suggestions when we turn over this project to the EDD to keep this rolling and keep it useful for those businesses. And any suggestions that you have along those lines too, this is a good time to share them, because, you know, we're working on the report and working on this plan. All right, so Mike, I noticed the address field is required field. What do creatives out put there who don't have a physical space? Yeah, that's a good question. You can put just, if you don't want to, obviously, if you work from your home and you don't want to put your home address, you can just put the address, your town. If you want to put, like, yeah, I think that's probably the best move. I don't want to overcomplicate it. So just put for our form the town that you are in, and make sure that you also, in the other questions, when you say, like, is this place open to the public, just explain that you are not open to the public. You are a musician or performer, and we'll sort of sort through it from there. Like any kind of data collection, right? Like it might end up being things that we don't, that surprise us, right? If a lot of individual artists and creatives use this, we might end up with a sort of different kind of directory. And that's still useful because we can figure out maybe this resource map is not the only way to put these, put this list of folks together, right? So it's okay if you're not a physical business with a physical space, you can still be part of this, and we'll figure out how to incorporate that. All right, we got a hand raised. Ooh, I love it when people raise their hands. It's such a funny thing. Yeah, go ahead, Cynthia Delgado. Let's go ahead, and you can talk if you want. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and we'll just let folks talk. Yeah. Hi,
Good
Cynthia.
afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm relatively new to this. I'm part of the National Dance Institute of New Mexico. So I have multiple questions.
Sure.
And you can cut me off whenever you want.
Sure.
One, if you have two locations, do you make two listings?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Second,
Let me ask. Sorry, I shouldn't have answered that so quickly. Is it two locations for the same organization?
yes.
Oh, in that case, yeah, we anticipated this. Um, in that case, in the address, here, let me share my screen again. That's a good question. In the address part, put both addresses, but yes, only one entry. If it's two locations for the same organization, put all the different addresses in the address question. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Hold
cool.
on. I'm just then the other thing that I'm not sure this is being set up for. So we hire creatives. We hire dance instructors, we hire musicians, both full-time and part-time. We potentially have artists in residence, but I'm not sure how we would utilize this to connect to potentially that that group of artists. And we fit perfectly in terms of the creative industries and growing it, and we hire people full-time with benefits, all those kinds of
Wow.
things.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is set up for that.
So do you mean you don't know if it's set up to sort of announce to potential employees that you're looking for to hire them? Is that what you mean?
That's correct. We hire
Okay.
dancers, producers, choreographers, musicians.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let me think about it for a second. Because right, it's it's more geared toward listing the business itself. I think that, yeah, let me write that down because I think that what you're describing also points out the need for a sort of maybe that something else the creative industries division could do on top of this is have a sort of job board for creatives and artists so they can connect specifically with organizations like yours, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I
let me
mean,
write that down.
but
That's a good idea. That's something that we've definitely heard about. And I think it's good because I think that there is some, it's good to really point out that these things can't really be one size fits all kind of
right.
resources. So let me write this down. Okay.
Um, I'm sorry, I have so many questions, but
No, it's
can I
good. I mean,
have
I think your questions are also questions that other folks here probably have as well. I mean, that's a really good one. And so, it's Saturday afternoon. It's a bit of a it's a bit more loose. So yeah, go for it.
then the other question I had is the economic development going to use this platform to push out notifications, programs, local grants, state grants, even federal grants?
Yes. So
Because
that's, sorry, go ahead.
if they do, then there will be a value for people to get onto this.
Yes, that is correct. And yes. And in addition to, so the answer is yes, it will be used to basically sign folks up for the creative industries division specific mailing list. But because you're asking that, I also want to share if people want to, as Cynthia said, be made aware of funding opportunities, grants, um, investment opportunities, like, these sort of business networking events specific to the creative industries, all of those things, if you want to be part of that and get those emails, but you don't necessarily want to be part of the map, um, there is just a straight up mailing list for the creative industries division, which you can get to. And I know Jen Joy Rabal said in the Q&A that perhaps folks aren't seeing the chat. So I'm gonna put this. Yeah, I mean this is sort of part of all the outreach. So folks have probably seen this, but we'll make sure to send it to follow up email for participants. But this page for the Creative Industries Division, this sign up right here, this stay informed, will get you all those emails as the EDD aggregates and collates all these different funding opportunities. And also for individual artists, and who are looking for more artist style grants. I also want to make sure that folks sign up for New Mexico Arts. I don't have that exact um, uh, I don't have the exact like where to go off immediately, but that's another good resource again for individual artists and creatives who are maybe not necessarily businesses, but just want to find out about arts grants. New Mexico Arts is a really good way to do that. Does that answer your question?
That was helpful.
Cool.
The last time EDD did a creative industries grant, though, it went out only to government entities. So, as either individual nonprofits, individual artists, even if, say, we wanted to collaborate on a mural for the Highland Theater,
Right.
we couldn't do that as our own entity. And then the way they set it up, the local governments could pick like one thing.
Right. Right. So let me tell you, that's a great the I understand, I think, the implicit question in that. And
Oh,
you're right.
sorry.
No, no, you're good. You're
Are
good.
they
Yeah.
going to open granting
Yeah,
to
yeah, exactly.
other organizations?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, no, you're good. You're good. No, I got it. And that's a great, I'm really glad you brought that up because that is something as, you know, we've been talking to folks across the state and traveling across the state. There is a lot of head scratching about that, to say the least, with that first round. So let me try to just tell everybody the deal as I understand it. So first, you're absolutely right that the way this bill is written, and if we look here at the actual bill, which folks can find, this is, you know, it's you know, ugly and boring looking because it's a state, you know, law, but it's really important to read it. The bill as it's written, if we scroll all the way to the bottom, um, says very explicitly that, sorry, my screen is jumping a bit, but hopefully folks can see this. It says very explicitly that grants may be awarded to a county, municipality, or other political subdivision of the state, an Indian nation, tribe, or pueblo, and for-profit and non-profit organizations. Okay, so why did the first round of grants from the EDD, why were only municipalities eligible for those? So there exists in New Mexico something called the anti-donation clause. And that's a huge topic that we I encourage folks to read about and to learn more about. But basically, the the most fun way to describe the anti-donation clause is that technically in New Mexico, because of this long obscure history, let me stop sharing my screen just so I can sort of move my hands around as I tell this story. So way back when the railroads were being built in the West, in the 1800s, railroad companies were selling bonds to public entities, and it was all a bit shady. Again, massive reductiveness of a very complicated story. And many Western states passed laws that basically said public entities like a state government, like a university, etc., could not provide something of value to private entities for nothing in return. And originally, the point of this was pretty narrow in scope, and most Western states have, since the 1800s, sort of refined their anti-donation clause to be more particular to certain industries, or they've done away with it entirely. New Mexico has not. So in 1913, I think, there was one New Mexico Supreme Court justice, I might be getting the year wrong, who said, yep, this is a great law. It should forever be interpreted as widely as possible. And ever since then, um, the state of New Mexico and any public entity cannot provide something for free to private entities. And that means that it's technically, by the letter of the law, illegal in New Mexico if you go to like a function put on by the city for them to give away. Yeah, we're getting there. Angela has a Angela has an important point in the chat, and we're gonna slowly get there. Um, if so technically by the letter of the law, right, in New Mexico, it's illegal for like a city to give away free coffee at a meeting because they're providing something of value to a private citizen, right? And in reality, as most folks know in New Mexico, um, that is not ever really enforced. But it is true, and I think fair to say that the anti-donation clause is a source of much confusion and is applied very differently and sort of worried about very differently by very different places. So um, and yeah, it has been, as Angela says in the chat, amended over the years to exclude economic development through programs like LEDA, which folks can also sort of go and read about, and I encourage folks to read about. And we've been talking about some of these programs throughout the week in some of these other webinars, and we'll share resources about that. Um, there are sort of exceptions that have been carved out for economic development to allow the state and public entities to provide assistance in the form of grants and loans and whatnot to nonprofit organizations and private organizations. And that is part of the reason why the law, in my understanding, right, was written the way it was, is because nowadays we do have exceptions carved out for economic development. Um, and so that first round, so that brings us all the way back to that first round of grants. And that was, again, I just worked for an organization called Creative Startup, so I'm not part of the EDD, but it is my understanding that basically with the time frame that was there, in order to make sure that that funding got moving as quickly as possible, the EDD chose this strategy of doing those grants for municipalities to work with nonprofits, and private businesses. And I know a lot of those projects worked with artists and whatnot, and did a lot of really, all of them doing a lot of really cool stuff. So definitely really cool projects, those 18. But yes, going forward in the plan that we're building for the EDD, we have spent a considerable amount of time trying to really explain how the Creative Industries Division can adhere to HBA as it is written and make sure that that grant money gets out to nonprofits and private businesses. So when that plan comes out, which we're going to be done with it by the end of this month, and then hand it off to the EDD. But yeah, we're really trying hard in that plan to explain how to do it. And there's a lot of precedent, and there's a lot of organizations that have been working on this with the anti-donation clause for like a long time. This is not new. Like, just one organization off the top of my head that's done good work on this is Somos in northern New Mexico, I think Santa Fe mostly, but they've worked on this. And and there's a lot of resources out there, but I know, I'm sorry, that's a really long-winded answer, but I just wanted to give the full context of why those first, and again, I wasn't there, so why I think that those first 18 grants worked the way they did, and what we are trying to build into this plan to help the EDD make sure that future grants going forward get out as the law asks for to nonprofit and private businesses. So just a little wonky discussion of New Mexico economic laws. Does that help at all, Cynthia?
It did, and I only have one more question.
Sure.
Sorry, and
No, you're
then
good. Yeah.
I'll
Nobody else
stop.
is, so yeah, no, it's great. Yeah. If folks
Um,
do have questions, feel free to share in the Q&A, or I just sort of, anybody who was here right when we started, because I was lonely, I just made them all panelists because it would be easier than just me talking to text. That felt weird. But if folks have questions in the Q&A or want to raise their hand and talk, that's cool. Yeah, just let me know. Go for it, Cynthia.
so my other question is, when I look at the segments to put your listing in, we are an educational institute and a performing arts organization. Can you hit multiple segments?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Should be able to do that pretty easily. Let me make sure. Yeah, they're just check boxes. So you can definitely check multiple boxes on the category of the place and the category of what sector you feel like you belong to. And we encourage people because, yeah, we encourage people to do that because we want to show that the creative economy is full of these multi-hyphenate organizations and businesses. And that's a whole other big topic. Like, there are these things called NAICS codes, which is one way that the federal government organizes industry, right? But they are arguably quite outdated and do not reflect the reality of contemporary businesses, which often flow between, rigidly defined sectors. So we encourage people to check multiple boxes because then we can turn around and say, see, there's many, so we need to craft solutions to reflect the reality, right? So that's another reason why this is so important. It's because we can say all this in the report and show and cite people's thoughts, but this data coming from actual creatives and artists and businesses, this data is very, very important and useful to help us tell this story, that we all know this stuff intrinsically, right? We all have, any of us who are artists and creatives know that we do a million different things, but we need the data to show that so we can present that to the powers that be, essentially. Does that make sense? Cool. Well, thank you very much, Cynthia. Do you have any other questions?
I do.
Okay, go for it.
When will the creative industries report your piece, creative startup, will that be public? And then second, once you do the report, I'm assuming, oh, let me make it a question. When
It's fine.
will the EDD groups put out their formal? What's the timeframes of these?
Um, what do you mean?
These reports. So
Okay,
there's, yeah.
sorry. Which what reports are you thinking of?
So you're gonna do creative startups, the contractor is gather a report or plan or
Right,
something that will go to economic development.
right.
Then I
Um,
assume economic development will put out an economic development, creative industries plan, but maybe not.
It's all the same thing as far as I
Oh,
know. Yeah. So it's a great question. It's a really important and great question. So let me sort of back up a little bit. Creative Startups is leading the effort to develop this plan with the Poe Cultural Center out of Powake, and Vital Spaces, particularly Rashan Ahmad. Um, and so I want to make sure that to shout them out because both those organizations have also done a ton of work, and traveled a bunch of places and done really good stuff to help us build this report and plan. It's all sort of the same thing. So to answer your question about timing, we have to submit it to the EDD by July 1st. So that's when we'll be done. And then what the EDD does with it and their timeline as for publication of it, they have told us that it's obviously going to be public. Yeah. I don't know exactly what their timeline is for publication. And the best way to find out, again, sign up for the updates. I do know that um, so the funding for this division, right? There was that first round of funding when the division was launched. It was one-time funding for basically 2 million. It was 1.8 million for 18 $100,000 grants. So just allow people to quickly, yeah, do that math. And then 200,000 to run this project and put on Creative Industries Week and helps, do all that. And recurring funding for the Creative Industries division that's starting in the upcoming fiscal year is at 200,000 for grants and um, 2 full-time positions. And it's our understanding from the EDD that they're trying to work on making it $250,000 for grants. I don't know if they haven't announced or anything like that yet, so I would not take it as gospel. But they are working on trying to get a little more money for grants, and they're working on being able to hire for those 2 full-time positions to actually run the division. I believe by fall of like September of 2024. So that's everything I know about their timeline that they've told us. And again, if you reach out, the person who's overseeing this project is Shawnee Harvey at the EDD, who is the head of, let me just pull up her exact title, but she's great, very accessible, does a really wonderful job answering a million emails. And I'm sure if you reach out to her as she's able to, she'll tell you everything that she knows. And she actually works at the EDD. And then, yeah, so that's all the timelines. And let me find, yeah, here, I'm going to put her email in the chat as well. A quick, let me pull up the map again because Jessica Roybal in the Q&A said, I click on the map and it doesn't take me anywhere. So let me just quickly pull up the map again, just a little tech walkthrough here. So the map itself, if you click on it, it's gonna filter down here. If you scroll down, it's gonna filter resources by region. So if I click here in the southeast part of the state, for example, let me give it a second. Yeah, it's going to show me southeastern region resources, but you got to scroll down to see them. So if I click up here, we got northwest region resources. Yeah, I mean, it's not, I don't know. I mean, no opinion on the user friendliness of this or whatever, but yeah, just that's how it works. So does that, I think that probably answers that question. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, it's Saturday. Yeah, no, I feel that. Okay, cool. Wow, I really did not actually expect people to hang out or to actually go this long. So thank you for hanging out. I was kind of nervous that no one was going to show up and I was just going to be clicking on a website by myself on a Saturday afternoon. Um, but yeah, I mean, these are great questions. I really appreciate you, Cynthia, especially for jumping in. And I think these are questions a lot of people have had in their minds. So I'm really glad that I was able to answer them and that we're recording this so we can share this out and tell people, hey, we also happen to answer these frequently asked questions in this webinar. Does anybody else have any, since I'm sitting here, and I've been working on this for the last, since December of 2023, does anybody have any questions just about the project or anything? Yeah, we got Mike Root here. So go ahead, Mike. Do you want to ask your question in the
Yeah.
verbal form?
First of all, thank you. This week's been amazing, and
Oh,
all the
thanks.
have been really, really informative and eye-opening. And unfortunately, I didn't make it to the number of things that I would have liked to. I know you've been recording things, and I just wanted to kind of ask what the process or timeline is that you're going to make those available.
Great question. We're gonna sort through them. Basically, it's Zoom, right? So they all get recorded, then we have to like download them and sort through them and re-upload them. But we're gonna sort through them next week and try to get everything sorted next week. And then it's another thing that I'm pretty sure this is true, that we are handing it off to the EDD and they are going to publish it. But I'm going to know on Monday, I'm going to ask that question of my boss. So if we can just publish them, because I would like to just publish them all next week. If we can, we might have to wait until the EDD publishes them, which we will encourage them to publish them as soon as possible because we're going to be doing all the work, obviously, to make them publishable. But yeah, I'm going to ask that question on Monday. We're going to send out follow-up emails and try our best to publish all of the recorded sessions next week. Yes. Cool. Good question. Yeah, I know that there's been a ton of stuff. It's been great. I mean, it's been really wonderful. I've been so appreciative. We've had such really smart people, really cool ideas throughout the whole week. And it has been an experiment. We wanted to do it online because even with the broadband issues in New Mexico, of which there are many, we still felt like this would be more accessible for folks across the state than asking everyone to drive to a centralized location for a conference. Now, in years to come, hopefully, as the EDD gets more money for this division, you could do both, right? Because it is fun to show up in one place and see everybody from across the state, but it's also an economic burden to spend all that money on gas and whatnot. So hopefully in the future that this will continue and it can be both. But yeah, it's been great. It's been a really good week. I've had like something like 400 folks have signed up and either watched live or are going to watch the recordings or been involved in some way. So yeah, we really appreciate everybody who's showing up and sitting. And yeah, we're sort of hitting to the end of this session. I want to encourage folks, if you have time, if you're interested, we have a really cool session at 2 o'clock about community-based solutions for shared economic prosperity, which again is another one that we wanted to do on a Saturday specifically to try to make it accessible to folks who work during the week, because we felt like it was a really important topic to talk about together with working folks. And we've got actually one of the participants, one of the panelists, Angela McCurt, sorry, is here hanging out with us, but she's going to be there in just a few minutes as well. So I encourage folks to join that panel as well. We've got, oh, thanks, Jessica. Jessica Roybal says, I have learned so much over the last 12 webinars. I appreciate you organizing this and look forward to seeing the results of this effort. Well, that's very kind, Jessica. I appreciate that. I'm very impressed with you for being there for 12 webinars. That's a lot of webinar stamina. And I appreciate that. And we definitely appreciate that. And yeah, please, we're going to definitely send out surveys and anonymous surveys, but please reach out. Someone early on asked about my contact info. If you've been getting all these emails from me reminding you when the Zoom is, you have my email address. So you can just reply to that, but I will also put it in the chat here. So please reach out to me directly, any feedback, any input, as we sort of wrap up building this plan. Yeah, it's been great. I mean, early on in the year, I was very privileged to travel around to something like 28, I think, 29 of 33 counties in New Mexico and meet with folks. And I know there are places we weren't able to go, didn't have time, and we tried to reach out to folks in every county. But we really wanted to focus in those travels also on the counties really around, because New Mexico is a very rural state, really some of the counties that were not the central counties, because in our research, we sort of noticed that often those folks get left out of these conversations. So we really wanted to start with that. And I feel pretty good about our ability to reach folks. So Zoom link for the 2 p.m. webinar. Yes, I will send the Zoom link for the 2 p.m. webinar right now. And then I think we'll go ahead, unless anybody has a burning question, we'll go ahead and wrap this up so folks can take a little break. Let me pull up that link for the 2 p.m. webinar. If you're not already registered, this link will basically take you to a page where you can register and then give you the link from there. But I've gone ahead and put it in the chat. And I will put it, thank you, Jim. Jim Moffat says, I learned quite a bit of useful information and got a good introduction to the new CID. Cool, thanks, Jim. I'm glad that you did. So yes, link, thank you, Mike Root. The week has been amazing. I appreciate that. So I put a link to the next panel in the chat. Please join us. And I'm very excited about this conversation. Angela is the executive director of the Alliance for Local Economic Prosperity. I got that. Yes. And we're also being joined by Kayvon. I got to look up his last name, but he's a very, very dedicated, thoughtful, creative entrepreneur and investor from Raton, who has a lot of cool ideas. And I really, really encourage folks to join that panel if they're able to, because it's going to be, I think, a pretty stimulating and dare I say radical conversation, which is my bully work. So thank you all. We're going to take a few minutes and just disband here and hopefully see you in a few minutes for community-based solutions for shared economic prosperity. All right, take care. Bye, everybody.